Welcome to the Rollwise podcast. In this week's episode, we've been inspired. Recently, there was a release of Amazon Studios preview for the Fallout. I think it's a TV series, the Fallout TV series. And so we thought we'd give ourselves a quick look at Fallout throughout the ages. First of all, a video game. Now there's a TV series. There's also been an attempt at RPG books. So I think we have a lot to talk about. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off? What's your experience and history with Fallout?
My experience in history actually goes back to the beginning of the actually before the first Fallout game. The company that published the original Fallout game first published a game called Wasteland that was on PC. That they weren't publishers; they were just designers, and so I think that it was Electronic Arts that they licensed it to. And later on, they went back and wanted to make more content, and they couldn't get the license back from EA. Yeah, funny how things with EA weren't all that different in the late 80s, early 90s than they are now.
So it seems like they were pretty greedy on their licenses even back then.
Even on other people's IP that they bought into and published. But then they did, I think it was Fallout and Fallout 2 on PC. My involvement, like I was aware of the games. I was buying, magazines and stuff and reading about the games and hearing about them, but I did not have a gaming PC. I had two young kids, so I didn't have any time to do that. But Fallout 3 was really the first place where I played on console on PS3 and was blown away. Like I was pretty amazed. And then it was after 3, then it was Fallout, was it New Vegas was next?
Yep.
And then Fallout 4. And that was the last one that I actually played. I somehow missed. I was planning on buying 76. I knew it was coming out. And then my kids had friends that, my kids grown now, right? Had friends that tried it and they were like, whoa. They were in the no bueno category for Fallout 76. I'm sure that the property has been optioned a couple of times. I tried to look to find out some information, Mike. I didn't see anything on previous options for movies or TV shows. But, a lot of these IPs get picked up at various points or another. Right now, we know that Amazon Studios is making a TV show. It was just a teaser. But it seems like it's capturing some of the vibe that Fallout's always had. To me, Fallout's always kind of had a vibe. There's been a lot of interesting characters, a lot of humor for a post-apocalyptic setting. You're in all of these wastelands. Like we've talked, with the DJ when they were in DC in the Capitol Wasteland. Just the guy DJ in the radio and his comments and the jokes, like they're not great jokes, guys, but you hear them and they're delivered really well and they're funny. Fallout's a game that if it hits for you, it sucks you in. If it doesn't hit for you, you're like, okay, I don't know why people are playing this game. Everybody's got the stuff that they like, but Fallout's always just had this feeling and this vibe of, like an open sandbox. I don't have to follow the story linearly. I can go there or here or there, somewhere else. I can come back. They've added things, over the years. The combat, I personally dislike the combat a lot, but I love playing the game. So I find ways to do as little combat as I can.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely an interesting series. And I think that there's actually been some, I don't know. I would say that, when I think about Fallout, I kind of get that like strange, because if you look at which game was probably your biggest influence of like where your Fallout came from, I have to say Fallout New Vegas, I put the most time into out of all the games. I played Fallout 3 a lot, but I played Fallout Vegas like to death. Now, because I have, no brain matter to speak of, I there's a lot of it I don't remember. There's some iconic moments, when you're firing missiles or something like that, you just see like the bay doors open, those kind of things. I remember some of those like really consequential scenes. I also remember those weird sheriff bot things that, the big face television
big
modern.
TVs, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's just certain characters that were just so crazy and memorable when that comes into it. That it's like I think it depends on which Fallout game you were really part of to kind of get your vibe for it. Because I think that other than the post-apocalyptic feel, like Fallout New Vegas definitely gave you a feeling that like it was post-apocalyptic, but there was like society was rebuilding, right? You had these factions, you had Kaiser, you had the New California Republic, you had all these different things happening. What was the main guy's name in Fallout New Vegas? Like Mr. Body or something like that.
It was something like that. No, it was something like that.
Something weird like that.
It was something like that.
So you had these different factions, but it was, from like a post-apocalyptic world, it definitely wasn't like society is over. Every person you meet is going to try to kill you. Well, you did start off with somebody trying to kill you,
yes.
but
yes.
There are people trying to kill you.
But there were definitely pure like areas within the wasteland that were more
open for
society.
trade, open for business in some good.
I think that's one thing that Fallout does really well. Fallout 3 was my first Fallout that I played religiously. I never finished it, of course, because I never finished Fallout game. But I did play it for a long, long time, just kind of wandering around the wasteland. And but I think that's one of the things that it does good, and it's like kind of like atom punk, nuclear punk, diesel punk style wasteland, where it's like you don't like the world isn't over. The world's just rebuilding itself into something different. And I think that's kind of one of the neat things about Fallout. And about the radio guy, the guy on the radio in Fallout 3, like I remember like he was like your friend in the wasteland. It was always really, really interesting to have that kind of companion in the wasteland and the radio in your ear all the time. That's what I remember that pretty fondly. And wandering around Washington, DC and like going and finding the monuments and stuff. In Fallout 3 was pretty amazing. Their ability to like meld like real world stuff into the fiction of the game was really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a neat series, and I think depending on a few things, like I actually one of the things that I thought was neat is that as I was doing research for this, there was a guy. Do you guys know who Tim Kaine is? You guys ever?
Isn't he the guy who created Wasteland?
He was the guy who created Fallout.
Okay,
the first Fallout. So like he was apparently Interplay was just like, oh, we have this B tier game we want to put out, unnamed project. Tim, you go work on it. Apparently he was just on this project by himself for like 6 months. And so as he was kind of building the game up and everything along those lines, he actually created this design document. So you can kind of see the influences of what what Fallout would later kind of enshrine internally. And I think probably what fell out of it at some point, because, like, here are the things that it had. And you might appreciate this, is that the first rule is multiple decisions. We will always allow for multiple solutions to any obstacles. Rule 2, no useless skills. The skills we allow you to take will have meaning in the game. Rule 3, dark humor was good. Slapstick was not. So you may see that dark humor kind of pervasive in some of the sections of the game, which I think that's good. Rule 4, let the player play how they want to play. Rule 5, your actions have repercussions. And I think when we think about Fallout, Brent, you said it yourself, you kind of played the game differently, and you said you never finished a Fallout game, and you probably enjoyed the hell out of it, or had at least 100 plus hours into it, even though you didn't finish it. And I think it's because you could just explore every nook and cranny, and Fallout 3 felt like such a big game to me. Like, I don't think I ever finished it. I don't even remember what the point of the game was. As soon as I left the vault, I was supposed to find my father or my child or something, and I just they were like, go straight, and I was like, off to the east.
Fallout 4 was a fun. You were supposed to find your son. I think the biggest drawback for Fallout 4, spoilers for anybody who hasn't played the game, it's only been years since it's been out, is the robots, the
Mr. Handies.
No, the people that are robots, the androids that people are being replaced by.
I haven't played that far into the game.
Well, spoiler. It was just a storyline that didn't interest me, and that's what eventually made me fall off.
So I think it's neat because Fallout is such a strange game. It hits it doesn't hit the typical post-apocalyptic vibes, I think. And so when you guys watched the trailer, what did you guys think about so we'll talk about the RPG last, but what did you guys think about the trailer that was put out by Amazon Studios? Like, did you guys think it's like the Fallout that you expected? Do you think it was too post-apocalyptic?
I didn't
Not?
see the trailer, but I watched the stills, and the stills were pretty impressive.
Mhm.
Like the armor definitely looks like Fallout power armor, which I think is a
Mhm.
look that's really important. The ghouls look like the intelligent ghouls, anyways, look like the intelligent ghouls do in the game, with like not having a nose, but they don't look too freaky, which I think is important.
So now here's a question for you. Is that having played Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 as much as you did, is I thought because I never played Fallout 4 very much. Like, in fact, I just
Yeah.
started playing Fallout 4 recently because it's always been on my pile from Steam. But I just, for whatever reason, I just never like installed it and got playing. But I remember ghouls looking disgusting. Like, you saw like the ghoul and they were just like melted flesh and like no good. Is that, do they get cleaned up, or is there like different classifications of
Well, I mean,
ghouls?
there's two ghouls. There's the feral ghouls, which are the undead not undead, but like the dead cannibal types
Mhm.
outside of most
Yeah.
civilizations. And then there's the ghouls that are still intelligent.
Yeah, but I thought even they looked pretty.
They look ghouly. I mean,
Well, they don't have a. They usually don't have a nose.
Yeah, they
which
don't have a
makes them look pretty.
nose.
Just
And
the
they-
nasal cavity showing is pretty
and they're
gruesome.
usually pretty gaunt, but they don't look
Yeah.
totally inhuman like the ones in the wasteland look like.
Hmm.
There's one really fun character in Fallout 4, the guy that dresses like a pirate. I can't remember his name. He's a ghoul. He dresses like a pirate. He's pretty fun.
Oh, okay, sweet. It's now. Are you saying that he dresses like a pirate and he's fun because he has slapstick piratey comedy? Or
He makes. I think he says piratey things, which is pretty entertaining, really, in the wasteland.
yeah. So Jeff, did you have a chance to watch the trailer?
I did, and it. I mean, it ticked a lot of boxes. There was a lot of things like, that seemed familiar, right?
Mhm.
To kind of pull you in. I didn't get, a feel for what the entire, series is going to be like because we're still a
Mhm.
ways away. It's releasing, I believe, in May of next year,
Oh,
something like that, April, May.
it's pretty good distance.
Yeah, we're still 4 or 5 months away, so changes can happen. But they've got a lot of stuff shot, and they hit a lot of those neat, reveal scenes, the iconography, the Pip Boy. The power armor, definitely. The power armor was even larger than I thought. Did you see the power armor in the stills, Brent? The power armor and the guy standing next to it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be huge. So
yeah, it is.
Mhm.
So I think the power armor is probably the thing that I think looks. It's definitely the thing I think looks the best.
Did you catch dog meat in the trailer, Brent?
I did not see dog meat. No.
Yeah. No. So I don't think there was a still of dog meat, but dog meat, like the dog meat was basically you saw him attacking a rad roach, and I think you saw him with a hand in his mouth, like just a severed hand.
But I mean, dog meat has to be there. He's another iconic.
Yeah.
Dog meat across the wastelands is like another iconic. Like there's just that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for a Fallout TV series is the fact that there is so much that is purely iconic about the franchise. It's something that's very easily going to make people feel cheated if it's not right.
Yeah.
That's
and I
true.
mean, and honestly, it's not being as like connected at the hip as the Fallout fan base and all that
Sure.
stuff to the IP, because and I'll put it out here, I would consider myself a casual fan of Fallout. Like, it definitely has a different meaning to me than somebody who has gone deep into the lore, understood the web of story that has been created through the various games and everything like that. And I think that there's a few questions that are going to be asked about the series, because the series itself, like, is it going to be is it going to be too post-apocalyptic? I mean, they did show a settlement in there, but I was reading one thing, and they were talking about how one of the scenes that you saw was the boneyard, which I guess is Los Angeles, and Los Angeles looked pretty much like nothing had happened, like it was just a sea of rubble, right? Well, apparently, and this is if you go back to New Vegas is with like New Vegas had the Boneyard and is one of the, I think it was a DLC for that. I could be wrong, but it was like the new California Republic had effectively resurrected LA. People were living there. It was a town, buildings refurbished. Like it wasn't like it's not like it was not like the Wild West. It was you had these factions that had like the NCR had effectively reestablished itself, kind of thing. So the question becomes is that there's going to be canon that the video game, the video game players and stuff like that have in their mind, and then the question is what liberties are they going to take in the show, and how closely are they going to follow their own storyline?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons they set it in Los Angeles was so that they could play with the setting, but not have to follow a video game plot line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's things in the canon you can get away with, like passing, but you have to have things like vaults. You have to have the power armor. You have to have the ghouls. Like, I think there's things that are going to be major, like important things and things that they can kind of ignore that are going to be fine. But like, if they get those big things wrong, it's going to be a problem.
Well, and I think the one way they could get those big things wrong is if it's fan service for the sake of fan service and doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, like power armor is cool. I'm always there for power armor battles, but like, just having power armor on the screen necessarily isn't the best for telling the story. But who knows? I mean, because it could, if it's dark and it kind of leans into the dark humor, like because Vault-Tec, they're not good people. That was well established that the Vault-Tec, going into a vault was like, oh, you're safe ish.
It definitely can't be Mad Max.
Right.
And I guess that's what I would worry about is that they would lean too heavily in what is existing post-apocalyptic media. Because it's definitely not Mad Max, and it's definitely not like not many other things capture that 1940s, 50s feel that Fallout really leans into, that alternate history.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Jeff, you saw this, but when they did go back to the vault, there was a scene with the Overseer, and I think that was Chris Parnell. He's the guy. I think I remember him from Dr. Spaceman from 30 Rock.
Yeah.
But he looked like he was a Cyclops. Was I missing something?
No, he only had one eye. That's 100%.
Is that like a canon thing that I'm missing, or is that just like supposed to reference some?
I thought there were some. It's been so many years now since I've played a Fallout game. I know that's scary, but if it was 2014, right, when Fallout 4 was released, it's been a long time.
Okay. I mean, there's mutants.
Yeah. So is that like he's just supposed to be a mutant that's a Cyclops? And
I don't know.
By Cyclops, do you mean his eye was in the middle of his head, or he just had one eye?
Just it looked like it was in the middle of his head. Okay. I mean, it looked like they had built up flesh in this area and stuff like that, and he was kind of clumsy, kind of playing into the idea that he like had tipped over a cup or something, like playing into the idea that he had less depth perception or something. But am I reading too far into that, Jeff? On the preview?
I think you might be reading too far into it. Feel like we might let the viewers down on this one. I'm sorry. I'm trying to scan through the trailer right now, but
temper expectations.
Yeah. No, he's definitely like a Cyclops. That's right in the middle of his head. I want to say that I remember some Cyclopses in one of the games, but hey, if you're watching this and I'm wrong, leave a comment. Tell me.
Yeah, that's fine. And also, if you're watching this and you have a favorite Fallout game, let us know. Which was your favorite game? Why did you like it? What was your? I mean, did you really just enjoy all the brown in Fallout 3? Is that, or was there some other reason why you enjoyed it? Like the radio stations or the weapons or the.
I honestly I love that the all this 40s and 50s music they dug up. Like there are still songs from Fallout games that pop into my head from time to time, just because I've heard them so much, and I have never heard them outside of a Fallout game.
Yeah, it's an excellent use of free. It's an excellent use of free use radio. Like it's an excellent use of songs that are public domain. A lot of people should probably listen to, like they could learn from that, I think.
Yeah. Well, they do such a good job, like mirroring the tone that they want. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's just neat. They've had a lot of really talented people working on these games.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that there's a lot of how do I say it? There's kind of a lot of um I don't want to say iconic, but there's a kind of a lot of things that went together to create the good experience. And one thing that I would personally say when I'm playing a video game, and I think we could probably wrap this up before talking about the tabletop RPG, is that music is such a big part of any gaming experience. And I know I don't like play background music for when we game and all that stuff, but if you have a video game that has good music, it just sticks with you forever. Like, I mean, I still get flashbacks to when I was playing. I was playing Chrono Trigger 2, I believe it was, and it had this certain kind of like upbeat soundtrack. And if I ever listen to it on Spotify, I'm like transported 20 years back in time, like immediately. You know, it just was that profound in my brain.
No, use of songs in media and games is really important, because like
Hmm.
there's songs that I know that I hear that put you back in that moment, and yeah,
Yeah.
it links multiple senses to the moment, and I think that
Hmm.
that helps.
Yeah. It's just, and it just ties it all together. And as I've recently discovered how your memory works, memory is a complicated construct. It's very strange. Um, so
It's true.
it's a very weird thing. I kind of just imagined them as like files in my brain, but apparently not. It's a whole combination of chemicals that have to come together correctly to
Mhm.
create the memory. It's messed up.
It's
And
more like monkeys throwing paper around, quite frankly.
yeah, I was gonna say I was reading something on a study where if you ask most people
Mhm.
about specific memories, they're sure they're remembering it 100% exactly the way it occurred. But apparently, most of our memories are, in terms of being absolutely correct, actually incorrect. They
Mhm.
like we have certain details that we swear are true that just aren't true.
Mhm.
Parts of what we remember just like we remember parts of it, but not all of it as much as we think we do. And so it's really interesting
Well, like
if you read some of this stuff.
and like so much of how it's memorized is state dependent. Like
Mhm.
a lot of it
Yeah,
is like what you're doing, how much sleep you've had. Like if you're in a
Yeah.
weird state of mind, you won't remember it correctly either. You might remember it worse or better. Or yeah.
Well, and
yeah.
it's actually funny you should mention that, because it's like when I went through college, I was like, well, I'm so tired all the time. In order for me to do well on this test, I also have to be tired. I can't get a good night's sleep, or else I will do poorly. It's really weird to think about that, but
Mhm.
that's how I got through college somehow. I don't know how, because I don't remember any of it, but other than that, that was the one thing I do remember. So let's talk about the Fallout role playing game. And the Fallout role playing game,
And
there
which
was
version are we talking about, Mike? Because
we're
apparently there's been more than one.
There has been. So I'm going to run you guys through a quick little history that I was able to find out. Because first of all, this is probably more general knowledge, especially for the people that are a little bit more fans, is that the original Fallout game was based on GURPS by Steve Jackson Games. And the original title for the game was going to be Vault 13, a GURPS role-playing game or something like that. Something really crazy long. And eventually people just kind of like gave that the X, and they went through a few other names. Which, side note, here were some of the other names according to Tim Kaine: was the Vault, that's not bad, Ground Zero with a hyphen, and Ground Zero without a hyphen, Rad Storm, Nuclear Winter, Doomsday Warrior, After the Bomb, Hiroshima Revisited, and then of course Vault 13, a GURPS post nuclear role playing game, and a plethora of others. But I was just like, I don't think that Hiroshima Revisited would have been a very long franchise.
I don't know, when did it come out? It was like in the early '80s. Is that when it was?
No,
I think it
Fallout
was the
came
late
out.
80s,
Well, the original
early
Fallout came
90s.
out 1997. Like,
Oh yeah, that was quickly reaching the prime, the time when you wouldn't have been able to do something like that.
yeah. And so I mean, I could see why a lot of those were shot down. Of course, Fallout was part of that list, but according to Tim Kaine, he didn't actually consider it. And then the head guy or something like that came and was like, "What about Fallout? That works." And they're like, "Yeah, it does work." And so when it came to the role playing games and everything like that, GURPS was originally going to be the kind of the glue that kept it together. And it's not really clear as to why everything fell apart. could have been that Steve Jackson Games didn't like the violence and like the execution or whatever that happened in the beginning of the GURPS cutscenes. Other people believed that they didn't like to be constrained by the GURPS licensing red tape and all the things that are happening there. So there's no story, at least we know, as to what's the truth about it, other than they did ditch GURPS before they launched Fallout. They redesigned Special, which was kind of like they kind of took an amalgamation of gaming things and put it into the video games. And then they use that as the basis for stats and everything like that. Now, ever since the original game came out, obviously there have been a lot of fan related attempts at creating role-playing games. I was able to find that somebody had at least created a home conversion in GURPS, so actually used GURPS to play Fallout.
Oh wow!
They had another one. Somebody had homebrewed something for 5th edition, so you actually put a 5th edition GURP or 5th edition veneer on that. There was one that I don't even know where this came from, but I think there was something that was like about Fallout with My Little Pony as the characters, like ponies in a Fallout thing. My
Little Pony sneaks into everything eventually on the internet.
I think so. I mean, these are the fan based ones. The one that I was a little bit confused by is there was somebody who'd created a Fallout using the Genesis system. So basically Fantasy Flight Games, and that was back in 2018. I didn't really see if that was like an officially licensed Fallout. I don't know if that was a homebrew or not. And then, of course, we have our officially licensed by Modiphius, the 2D20 2021 version that is what we're going to attempt to play. Now, there have been other like tabletop games. Like if you want to just skip the role playing and go straight to the tactical stuff, they did put out like a Fallout Wasteland Warfare. Modiphius did. It actually has figurines and stuff, which could be fun if you really just want to get into Wasteland combat. And I know at least me and Brent have been really into Warhammer 40K at different points in our life. I don't know, Jeff, were you ever into Warhammer 40K?
No, I like the game. I have never played it nor wanted to invest the tens of thousands of dollars that it would take to do that, and the tens of thousands of hours it would take me to paint anything.
Those of us who are in the hobby don't like to talk about that, so we're just gonna skip past that with your tens of thousands of dollars comment.
It's honestly the painting. I don't feel that I have any particular talent for painting or patience, and that has always been a big sticking point for me. So
that's my strength is patience.
We can tell.
Not painting, but patience. Yeah.
You paint well. I have seen your models. You paint well.
Yeah, you do. I mean, if you want to, you could even throw some up on the channel so people can ooh and ah and give you what is the CNC critique and something? Comments and critique. Is that what CNC stands for?
I don't know what this gibberish you're speaking means.
Well, when you go to like the mini painting subreddit, you see that people say like,
Brent doesn't require feedback for validation.
Well, I require validation for everything, but that's okay.
I just don't. I just don't. I'm not involved in the subreddit, so I'm not on Reddit. Really.
I'm on Reddit more than I should be, which, for better or worse, it's how I learn a lot of really random, useless facts.
Esoteric knowledge.
Yeah, pretty much. Stuff that might get me, like, I think the only time that Reddit has ever helped me in my life is that I was at a pub trivia one night and I happened to know, like, approval ratings of presidents because I had just literally read an article that afternoon about it. So I was like, oh, great. Yes, I won us the pub trivia by answering one question. That's it.
If it's the question that made the difference, it's the question that made the difference. What are you going to do?
I think I got some potato skins as an appetizer out of the deal. So that was the extent of my useless knowledge.
Potato skins. That's a solid, like B tier if we're using internet rating. Maybe A tier, but I think it's a solid B tier.
You won something. That's more than some of us can say. So good job.
I pushed the team over the edge. The funny thing is that I hadn't answered a question. Like I hadn't even attempted to answer a question the entire night. And I was just drinking my beer and I was like, I don't really know the answer. And then they came to that question. And I'm like, bet everything. I know this one. And they're like, I don't fucking know. And then of course I was there with a friend who was just like, He says he knows it. You should just do it. And so we did it, and we just like crushed the other team. It was like the one time clinch move. It's not like a glory moment because whatever, it's just bar room, but it was funny as hell actually.
Well, and it's hard to get that slow motion in trivia, like in the hero shot in the sports movies. It's hard to get that in trivia.
It is very hard to get that in trivia.
It is. You just taking the pen, and you have that like, I have the tiger. No, it's something. I don't want to get this copy strike or whatever the hell they say.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So the idea is that in the Modiphius version of the Fallout role playing game, I saw that people had there was a lot of different reactions to how this came out, because this actually came out back in 2021. I think it came out as a PDF first, and then came out as a hard copy later in the year. But I actually haven't played any of Modiphius's 2D20 stuff, in spite of owning like the Dune games and stuff like that. But Brent, have you played any of their 2D20, like Conan or anything? Or
I have not played it. I've read quite a bit because I read the Conan rules a few times, and then Cohorts Cthulhu's the 2D20 system. It's on the crunchier side. It's not necessary. It's crunchy with an idea towards cinematic. So there's a lot of stuff your characters can do in a combat.
Yeah,
it's very proactive. And I think there's combat. There's social combat as well, where if your player can't talk yourself out of the situation, I think there's a way. Like there's social defense and stuff like that, if I remember right.
Yeah. So I think in this game, it just to kind of give a kind of an overview of it, is that the system is a 2D20 system, and it's a basic, and what they mean by 2D20 is, I think that they mean that that's just that it's like that's your standard roll is 2D20, and then you basically buy or you're trying to roll under a skill or under a target number or something like that. You do have additional things that you can do to affect your ability to take a skill test. So for example, you can have action points, which allows you to buy additional D20s, so you can buy more rolls effectively for that. You earn action points by having being successful previous to this. You can critical, like the critical in this game is if you roll a 1 on a D20 and then that's a critical success, or if you roll under a tag skills value. So if you have like a skill like stealth,
there's a range. There's a range. You can specialize in a skill and it'll make it a range of like 1 to 5 or something like that.
Whatever the skill value is.
Yeah, whatever the skill range is. If you roll in that, it's a critical success, and it means you do something extra.
Well, it counts as 2 successes in that. So it can ultimately yield more action points depending on the number of successes you need. I did think the game was interesting because, you could your difficulties range from 0 to 5. And I think that this is kind of a weird thing for me, is that you can assist other people and take cooperative type approaches to certain things. So your normal skill, difficulty 0 is basically a situation in which you can just go about, you can ask a question without any difficulty. But what some people may do, and this is what they actually said in the book, is that they fish for action points. So you can go and basically say, I'm going to go gather some information. It's like, what interesting rumors about, old America exist here? And I roll my 2D20 and I roll 2 20s. Oops. Or vice versa. If you roll two successes, that gives you your additional action points and stuff like that, So it's kind of an interesting range, because like 0 difficulty is not hard at all. 1 difficulty is fairly achievable and might be almost too easy, if that makes sense. Just 1 D20. 2 is probably going to be the harder level of difficulty. It's like, basically, is it common or is it pro? 3 is like really hard. 4 and 5.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the way that it works is you roll multiple dice between 2 and I think up to, in Conan it was up to 5. I don't know if it's the same.
It's like the same here. Yeah.
And so you have a target number that you have to hit on each dice, and then the dice are what actually count for success. So if your target is like 12 and you have to roll under 12, so you roll a 9, a 10, like that would be 2 dice of success.
Yeah,
which means you're successful.
Yep. And so it's got a few steps in it, and I'm not really sure, because I think this is probably a game that could suffer very easily from if you consider a failure, like how you play out your failures, because you can still, like, this game obviously uses things like succeed with a penalty. It uses things like complications and stuff like that.
Yeah, it tries not to be binary. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not like, oh, I failed to pick the lock, therefore I can't proceed in the adventure like we've discussed before. It basically says, well, like, okay, so let's say you try to intimidate this merchant to get a better deal. Well, you have bartered poorly because your charisma plus barter equal to critical failure. Well, this guy remembers how you've tried to pressure him. He knows that, you may have a lot of bark, but no bite. And so in the future, he's going to make it harder to purchase stuff. Like he'll add a 10% tax to his goods. Those kind of things. So it's not an immediate like, oh, you failed, you fucked up, you're over. What else is kind of unique about it? So in looking through the rules, I did see that, it's like they did start with the skill tests and everything like that. They talk about action points and luck. And so the action points are basically a reroll. Now, the one thing that's weird about action points is that they're a group pool, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And the team can't have more than 6 action points at any given time. But since it's a group pool and everybody kind of contributes to it, anybody can use it whenever they need it. So it's not something like Brent doesn't give an action point to Jeff and say, here, use my action point for the success. He says, Jeff just says, I'm taking it from the pool of action points that we have.
Is there just one of those, or is there 2 of those? Because in Conan, there's momentum and victory points.
So in this, they use action points and luck. And so I think that the standard 2d20 uses the momentum mechanic. And I read something by the Alexandrian who was talking about momentum originally as being something that, he wasn't as happy with a group pool for that kind of things. He was more excited for having people with their own individual momentum pools that gave it to other people, if that made sense. But you also lost momentum.
Yeah, in Conan, I think one of them is a group pool and one of them isn't. Like your victory points are yours and your momentum is a group pool, I think.
Yeah, and then and so like in this one, your action points are the group pool and your luck points are the individual ones. And your luck points basically are based on your luck skill. And in this, they use the term quest. So you have so many luck points per quest. So when you go on your adventure, that's considered a quest for some reason.
Yeah, and the luck and the like momentum or victory points, I can't remember which is which. In Conan, I think they did pretty much the same thing, though. You could buy out basically the same type of stuff. So you get kind of an overlap there, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And so just to kind of break it down, I mean, so with action points, you can spend action points to buy D20s. You can spend action points to obtain information. Like one action point will ask the game master a single question about the situation to kind of get some more insight into it. You can use an action point to reduce the time. So like you can spend 2 action point halves the amount of time it takes to attempt a test. So if you're in a rush, go for it. And then you can also spend in combat to do additional minor actions, additional major actions, or even do extra damage. Because the one thing that's kind of weird about this is they did get excited and they did create a Fallout die 6 that like you also roll when doing things, and it's got a little Pip-Boy face and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on a 1 you do one extra.
Needed to tie in.
Yeah,
Conan has one too.
Yeah, so it's got Fallout dice, which I mean, kind of gimmicky, but it's basically just a standard 1d6. Whereas luck is more, you use luck to basically create an encounter. So you spend a luck point to introduce a helpful fact or detail about a situation that you'd have to be lucky to encounter. You can spend 1 luck to before you attempt a skill test, you use luck instead of the default attribute. So that's really only helpful if the default attribute in question is lower than your luck. And then you can use lucky timing to interrupt combat so that you go after another creature. So you'd go instead of the normal initiative order and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so it's got, I mean, those are kind of some nice things. And I think it gives you a little bit of like feels bad protection, if you ask me. Like, I think that could definitely do it. Now, as for the game itself, everyone kind of mentioned that the game is very much a Fallout 4 Like that's what's used almost all of its inspiration. So things that were in the other Fallout game didn't make it into this. So
Really?
yeah, so it's all Fallout 4 is the basic connection here. But you do get your own version of that. You can hit different.
That will be interesting.
You can hit creatures and hit certain hit locations. So you can hit them in the head, torso, left arm, right arm, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, well they have that in Conan too. They just reskinned it as VATS for Fallout, which is funny.
Well, they didn't. I don't think they actually reskinned it. They just called it the hit locations and everything like that.
Yeah, they have that in Conan too. It sounds pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
Does the GM have their own Doom points? That's what they're called in Conan.
They have action points just like the players do.
Okay.
And so, at least based on what I read. Now, what I would say is that it seems like what Modiphius has tried to do, and this is something that they apparently tried to do after Infinity, is that they tried to create a 2d20 SRD. So this game is going to be very similar with maybe a few changes to their kind of core SRD game mechanics. That is the 2d20. So what you see in Conan, if you're familiar with Conan, I bet reading through this you could skim it and have a very solid feel.
It sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Very similar, yeah.
So, I mean, I guess in your guys' case, I mean, it seems like it'll be fun and it's got a lot to it. Not knowing how the 2d20 system works. I mean, I've seen people kind of say some stuff, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but what kind of Fallout game, like, what do you think the kind of stories do you feel most interesting for a Fallout style game? Like, what kind of stories do you like being told the most in this type of setting? Ooh.
Well, I mean, in general, okay, so taking the Fallout out of it in general, post-apocalyptic games are really about survival, whether it's food or shelter or ammunition or consolidating with another group to defend yourselves from an even bigger group kind of thing. But it's usually all about survival and, how you survive. But Fallout turns some of that on its head and probably opens up a few more possibilities.
I mean, I think the main Wasteland trope stories are defending your outpost, finding resources, and then you get the more singular character stuff like you're looking for someone or trying to find someone. I think those are the types of stories that you see the most. Like Fallout 4 is about finding your dad or finding your son. Like Mad Max, well, that was about vengeance. Vengeance would be the other one. Revenge would be the other one. That's a big one. Because like the first Mad Max was about revenge, the second Mad Max was about protecting the gasoline, and the third Mad Max was about taking over the outpost, and then Fury Road was about protecting the mothers. So I mean, like those are the kind of. The only thing is like it's not going to be a chase scene in Fallout, which is like 90% of Mad Max movies.
Right.
So what you're saying is
the one resource they have is petrol of some kind.
Right. But I think the important thing is like those are like going out and finding someone or something because you need it, like searching for a cure or searching for a loved one. I think that's a common one. Searching for resources and then protecting what's yours, I think are the main tropes that I think of when I think of post-apocalyptic style games.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that because I think it with Fallout you can do one more that may not necessarily work as well in other types of games like this, that post-apocalyptic. Is I think you really get how do I say it? I think you really get like a sense of like because you can have that kind of small burgeoning society type role playing as well. Like a society is basically when came crumbling down and now it's being rebuilt. So it's not perfect. I mean, society is never perfect, but at least in this case, it's new, it's fresh, and all that kind of stuff. And I think there is some and there is some idea that you can basically go, okay, well, you can play in a small settlement. You can have power struggles in this small settlement because you guys are comfortable enough against your external conflicts. So what about your internal conflicts? And I think you can play some interesting things there.
Which I guess that would be like Thunderdome. It was kind of like that, but that's the close. But like, there's not many movies that I've seen that are like that. That are
Right.
purely politics. Like
Yeah.
usually the tropes that I mentioned are really what it is.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting world. And I honestly, its longevity, it doesn't surprise me because of the types of, dreams and aspirations that went into the game. But it is interesting to see how people envision the post-apocalyptic world and like what kind of emphasis do they play? Because the atomic age, like retro futuristic 1950s vibe that they leaned into it's a really cool thing because it's just like it's so fake and so like cosmetic, and then underneath it all is just so bad. I love it. So I think the only other thing I would say is that in the game itself, the game looks like it has had mixed reviews. Did you guys see kind of any reception to the Fallout game that is out there?
I didn't.
I know some of the concerns. Like I know some of the concerns about the 2D20 system on its own, about how crunchy it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's mainly the thing that I've read about. Is it's a pretty crunchy game.
Yeah,
because there's levels of abstraction in the dice rolling.
So Jeff, if you haven't heard anything about it, I don't really want to necessarily color your perception of it because I think we need to give this game a pretty fair shake. And when we play it,
I was purposely not trying to find out what other people thought about the game.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest, because if it turns out to be something that's not my cup of tea, then that's what it turns out to be. But I'd rather go in, sort of clean. I don't have the background like Brent's actually purchased other product. You know what I mean? Like he has an idea of the systems and some of that stuff. So I'm fine going in cold.
And I desperately want to run a Conan game someday, but I am a little bit worried about how crunchy it is. So it'll be interesting to work through it together.
Well, yeah. So what we can probably say is using this as a template and kind of and maybe what we do is we insulate ourselves because I've read some reviews and so I kind of as I'm going to be the one running this, I'll know what some of the pitfalls other people have run into.
Sure.
And so I'll kind of keep that away from you guys. I think, but after we play the game, we can do like basically a battle report or whatever it was, a post-mortem on how the game went, and we can kind of see if we felt the same way, because I think the one thing that we're really trying to do here is we're trying to play the games that we do, and I know that that's in itself its own controversy, as what you shared, Brent. So our impressions is that the game looks fun. It looks like it captures a lot of the Fallout 4 vibe and I think the general Fallout stuff. But you won't really know until you kick the tires and put it through its paces.
Yep.
So one piece of trivia: did you guys know? So that war never changes line, which is like the iconic Fallout. The thing that you see kind of at the beginning of all the games, like war never changes. Do you know who said that line in the first game?
Mm-mm.
Ron Perlman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the narrator in the first game. So,
oh wow,
there's your random piece.
Yeah, I never played the first game, so
I did.
That's pretty interesting.
It's on Steam if you want to pick it up. I didn't play through the first game because it just was hard to play, and I was like, I don't have enough.
I am not super into the top-down games of that era.
I am, but I still struggle with it a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what we can do is that if you guys want to watch us make characters, we'll be doing that on the 18th. So we're actually skipping next week. We're taking a little bit of a break, as you know, right about now, all the family requirements. So we are going to be subject to the scheduling, whatever.
Holidays.
The holidays. We've been attacked by a random schedule and we didn't survive. So we'll be off the 11th. We'll be back on the 18th and we'll be making Fallout characters. We'll kind of go through the character generation process. We'll see how good it is, what it entails, and how much fun we think we'll have. But do you guys have anything to add before we close up this episode?
No, I think we covered Fallout pretty thoroughly.
Well, at least from an amateur perspective, I'm sure we could go risk.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, Jeff, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of us, and then Brent, if you want to send us in the wild blue yonder.
You can look for us on social media. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Threads, and X at Rollwise. And you can also reach us by email, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, everybody, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.